So how did you end up at your position right now here in Hillsdale?
Yeah. The previous pastor, who'd been here 20 some years, was retiring. He and I knew of each other. We've been serving churches in the same denomination for a long, long time. I actually went to college with his daughter. So he's known about me since the mid 90s. And so, yeah, anyway, I think he knew of the work that I'd done and thought it would be a good match. And so when he got ready to retire, the church started looking for who would come next. And we were on a list of people they wanted to check into. And here we are.
Yeah. So where were you before that, though?
We spent 15 years in Grand Rapids.
Oh.
We were at two different churches in Grand Rapids. I was a youth pastor for about 20 years, finished doing that in the West Michigan area. And then from there, I took another church also in West Michigan near Grand Rapids, just west of Grand Rapids, as the lead pastor, and served that church for about 6.5 years.
When did you want to know you want to be a pastor?
Early. Growing up, I always wanted to be a pilot. I was just fascinated by flight and all that stuff. Wanted to go into the Navy, and that as a kid, that's what I wanted. And then probably about 7th grade, it was a spiritual calling. I just knew that while there were other things that interested me, I had to be in vocational ministry. And that just continued to grow and solidify all through middle school and high school. And then having just different conversations with important people in my life, whether it be pastors or my parents. I just saw over probably a 6-year period that this is what I needed to do with my life.
So you felt like you couldn't focus on other things, or if you focused on other things, it was pulling you away from something that was greater?
I would say if there were other things that I think I would have really enjoyed doing, but they would not have fulfilled fully what I knew I think I was created or called by God to do. So while I could do those, I think I still think a career as a pilot would be a lot of fun. Yeah. I just don't know that there's something deeper in me that I think would have felt left undone.
So you don't feel left undone having made the choice that you made, not pursuing?
Not at all. Not at all. Okay. I know I'm where I need to be and doing what I'm supposed to do. So, so I'm happy that I came to a realization of that probably early too. I know for some people they really struggle to know what should I be doing with my life, and am I where I am meant to be?
Yeah. What's the job description of a pastor?
I've had a lot of people. What do you do? Yeah. Over the years, I've had a lot of people ask me that. I joked with some people. I had a couple ladies. I always took my paycheck to the same bank. This was years ago. And so I was in there every Wednesday. I was in there to put my check in my account. And after a couple of years, the tellers, the 3 ladies in there said, "Can we ask you a question? What do you do all week? Like, we know you preach on Sunday, but what about the rest of the week?" And I said, "Oh, I just sit in my office and pray that people don't do dumb things, because then they call me to clean them up." And they laughed. And there's some of that, right? Like, as a pastor, you're stepping into the best days and the worst days of people's lives quite often. And so there's counseling, there's giving advice beyond counsel, or in addition to counsel. Managing, the church that I'm at now is a larger church, and so we have multiple staff. So you're leading your staff and helping develop them in their own right as ministers. Working with congregation to encourage people to continue growing spiritually. I've always said my role as a pastor is to provide opportunities for people to grow. it's not necessarily my responsibility to drag you to spiritual health or maturity. And so there's the personal element of encouraging and walking with people toward that. But then there's also the administrative logistic part of ministry. Somebody's got to envision, how do we help people grow? What programs need to be available? What do they need to learn? What information about themselves and about who God is? What the scriptures command us? All of that all kind of weaves together. And so, ministry is the visible part of it is the homily, is the sermon, depending on what your church, context is. The teaching, the upfront teaching is the visible part. But that just doesn't happen in a vacuum. So there's all kinds of other work to be done behind the scenes.
So you're like a religious Sherpa. It's like people can't see the top, can't see the end, and your job is to provide the opportunities and the possibilities and to walk along and guide them. Is that?
Yeah. And maybe lead toward the safest paths to get there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's a great picture of it.
Is that, I would imagine that's rewarding.
It's incredibly rewarding. Yeah. And I think that maybe goes to that fulfillment piece, right? Like, as you see people experience significant growth spiritually, emotionally, relationally with other people, you see God doing good work in their lives, and you see that transformation to know that you had some part in it, a minor role, but a role nonetheless. That's very rewarding to, over time, be able to see people healthier and better off than when you first met them.
I guess in a weird way, then it's like, if you introduce someone and they end up, like two people, and they end up getting married, and you're like, I didn't really do anything, but I made the introduction, so I'm kind of part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially if that relationship is maintained over the course of their relationship. Yeah. Sometimes they may say, hey, how does this work in the first couple of years of marriage? Or we're having an argument, and, we want to work through this together in a positive, healthy way. What works for you and your wife? It's all those kind of conversations along the way that it doesn't feel like massive pieces in the moment, but those little pieces maybe help get people around the next bend or over the next obstacle.
Well, if there's fulfillment with that aspect of it, on the flip side, there's got to be, like, I don't know, an emptiness or a regret when that relationship gets severed, but obviously you can't go mend it. That's a choice that they make. But if you're the one who brought them into that relationship or fostered that relationship, there's got to be an emotional burden on you when you see someone fall away from it.
Yeah, there's sometimes it's just disappointment. I think one of the important realities to remember in any position where you're trying to help other people is to recognize that we're doing this together. I have some responsibilities to help give you a vision for what could be, inspire you to chase after that, and then to give some resources to help you get there. At the same time, you also have responsibilities to show up. I would imagine you probably experience the same thing when you're dealing with people's physical health and emotional health. There's some people who embrace it wholeheartedly and just go gangbusters after it, and then others maybe start off strong and fall off quickly, or get distracted along the way. There's definitely space for disappointment or discouragement in that. I think if I get caught up tying my own worth and value and other people's progress, certainly then I might maybe to an inappropriate level or degree be affected negatively by those instances where people either walk away or
That seems like within your profession, that would be a occupational hazard that a lot of people fall into, though.
I would imagine. I heard a statistic probably 20 years ago that only about 8% of people who start their careers in ministry retire from ministry.
Wow.
That most people take an exit ramp somewhere. And maybe that's part of it is the disappointment or wearing personally the hurts, the struggles and the failures that other people maybe experience. If you carry them heavily, that could be a tremendous burden over the years, I would imagine.
The Sherpa life is not for everyone.
No.
Yeah. Well, what then are the characteristics of, let's say, a successful pastor? So like you obviously want to go the distance. So you're looking at other people who have been successful. I'm sure there are specific names that pop out, but more so, I think if you were going to take all of the people who you emulate and you were going to put them together into one maybe archetype of a pastor who fulfills his job description for a prolonged period of time and is able to come out on the other end and not be burnt out and still be his own person and not carry those burdens.
That's a great question.
What is that person like?
I think one, that person is spiritually healthy themselves. If we continue kind of thinking about the Sherpa example, a Sherpa that can't make it up the mountain themselves or never does, just says, okay, here's all the things you need to summit Everest, but is never walking the path again, just sending people up there, hoping the best for them. Then that's something that they've lost. If they've lost the joy and the thrill, and the fulfillment of making the journey themselves, then that would be an incredibly tragic reality. And I think that does happen a lot. I think we hear all the time about spiritual leaders who fail, either morally, or walk away from some of them from the faith altogether. I think it's easy to continue worrying about everyone else and telling them what they ought to be doing, encouraging them to be doing what they ought to be doing for their own spiritual health and benefit and maturity. And sometimes you forget to pack your own lunch.
I don't know if you know then, but for the people who fall off that path and I can't be this guide anymore, they may not have the best relationship with God, or maybe their spiritual health is suffering. Do they, by relieving themselves of that burden of being the guide, are they then able to go get back on the path themselves? Or do you find that people, because if you said 8% make it, that means the vast majority of your peers have fallen off or will fall off.
Sure.
So once they fall off that path and they're no longer the guide, do they just become agnostic? Do they become spiritually healthy again and then re-engage with the church in some way? Or or is it too variable?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I would hope that many of them, that would be a wake-up call, right? Like, I need to take care of myself spiritually as well. Like my relationship with God needs to be addressed and needs to be nurtured and kind of refostered, that would be my hope. Whether or not they go back into full-time ministry or not, man, I would sure hope that they would care for themselves spiritually and begin feeding themselves again. And sometimes I think you can. You can maybe step away for a while, get healthy again, begin engaging in those healthy regular practices again, and maybe re-enter It can be tricky. There are some expectations and maybe stigma about Christian leaders as well. When someone has either failed or even just stepped away for their own benefit, sometimes it's hard to come back, not because you're not ready, but maybe because other people now think, well, can we trust him or her to step back into this role because of what's happened in the past? Sometimes there's less grace and forgiveness extended to leaders. And to some degree, that's fair, I think. But sometimes we're slow to recognize that Christian leaders are also human beings, and sometimes they just need to care for themselves for a while and then get back to work, so to speak. Other times, maybe they care for themselves. They come back to a good place of spiritual health, and maybe for them the career then turns a path, and they minister to other people's, not in vocational ministry, but in some other vocation, and are still very effective and walking with people on those spiritual journeys, just not in a local church setting, maybe, or in a mission setting.
The definition of spiritual health seems very vague to me, and I feel like depends on who you talk to, you're going to get some very different answers.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't even know if someone asked me how I would define spiritual health. How do we even start to address what that is? Because if someone said, well, what's physical health? We can measure it.
Sure.
We might disagree on the specific measurements that are more important than others, but blood pressure, pulse, body temp, height, weight, BMI, cholesterol numbers. We could do blood work, blood sugar. We could do physical fitness tests. If someone's like, well, I have a specific goal, I need to be healthy enough to climb Mount Everest. Okay, well, we need to know muscular endurance, strength, oxygen saturation. How well you adapt to altitude. There's VO2 max would be huge. I can make a long list, and there's numbers I can put to that. And then basically I could look at your numbers and I can compare them to other people who have gone the distance and been like, statistically, you have the physical health to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But even then there's unpredictable things that could happen. So wouldn't be able to guarantee success, but we could quantify it.
Yeah.
It seems that spiritual health is so much more vague.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not.
I would agree with you. It's a lot more difficult, I think, to quantify it.
Yeah.
I do think you can look more generally. So, in some regards, that's nice, right? Like it extends a little bit of grace, but at the same time, it can give people room to make excuses. So I love in the scriptures the marker of fruit. I like the analogy, the imagery of fruit, and Jesus seems to go to that often. The Apostle Paul talks about spiritual fruit, and we know in nature, in God's creation, anything that's alive and healthy reproduces. If something's alive and it's not reproducing itself, we would say something's off, something's wrong, right? If it's in the world of botany, you have an apple orchard and all your trees are just heavy with apples in the fall, and the branches look like they're about to break off because they're just laden with fruit. And there's one tree, and either it has no apples or the apples are tiny. And if it's not reproducing, we would say something's wrong with that tree, or maybe it's just even one branch on the tree. And I think that imagery is really helpful. Jesus says, "I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will produce fruit." That fruit production is just a natural byproduct of that connection. And I think what Jesus is telling us is, if we remain spiritually connected to himself, that God, through the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, is in the reproduction business.
Yeah.
And so then we kind of look more generally to, is this a person who's reproducing spiritual fruit that has kind of the same DNA, if you will, that we see from Jesus in his life lived out. Paul talks about the fruit of the Spirit, and then gives us a list, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and so on. I think we can look at a person's life, and while we may not be able to measure how peaceful is this person and put it on a scale, we can start to see overall, if we step back and look at the general picture of this individual's kind of character and personhood and approach to life. You say, oh, there's definitely fruit here. This is a person of kindness, of gentleness, of peace. This is a person who loves others well. And then you could say, okay, there seems to be some health there. Now, can we measure it? That's a lot more difficult. So I think there are ways to look generally at spiritual health. To define it, it is a little harder.
So if a pastor, for example, steps away because of declining spiritual health, you would have to look at a multitude of potential things that could be, maybe that is the one thing, or there's a bunch of them and they're all kind of coming together in a unique way to detach that person. Is that kind of like it's like a complex ecosystem where if you affect one thing, it's ultimately going to have a ripple effect on everything else. So you can't just go in and manipulate one variable and expect that to just be it's not a car where you can just pull a spark plug and then put another one in. There's going to be a ripple effect through everything else.
Right. Yeah. The problems will be more systematic, maybe, or system wide, in that it seems. Like in a mechanical structure, there's probably one problem or maybe a couple problems. You address those and then you're up and running again. With a person, the Bible tells us that we are mind, body, soul, and spirit, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, and with all your soul. So as human beings, we are multifaceted. I could be very physically healthy and spiritually dead.
Yeah.
I know people who have been spiritually healthy, but their physical bodies are fighting cancer or suffering from heart disease or whatever else. Maybe they're not physically healthy, but they're spiritually healthy. So would you say they're healthy? Somewhat. But there's also places that are not healthy, and those things do seem to affect one another more so than in a mechanical structure, kind of like you mentioned. So they do affect each other. So I would say they're all important for us to be mindful of, to do assessments of our, as we examine our own lives.
So in that respect, if we could look at it from a different perspective. So if someone is maybe lacking spiritual health, we say, okay, there's all these things going on and they're all having an effect on each other.
Sure.
And if someone's saying, okay, I'm at a point now where I create spiritual health or regain spiritual health, the positive is that you could probably attack any one of these possibilities, and the ripple effects will be positive on other things
across the board.
So it's almost like a force multiplier if you're looking at it from one direction, but if you look at it from the other direction, it's like that's a slippery slope. You know what I mean? Like you give in here, it's going to have a ripple effect and branch out in ways that you don't want.
Yeah.
And when you get to that depth and you turn around and you go, oh, I want to go back the other way, it's like pick anything. And and it's going to have because that's how it is in health, like physical health to a certain extent.
Sure.
There's using the fruit analogy, there's a lot of low hanging fruit. You know, if someone's got heart disease and diabetes and they're overweight and they're, you know, it's like anything, like if you walk, we're going to get better. You could lift weights, we'll get better. You could drink more water, we're probably going to improve. You could eat an apple today, and that's probably, you know what I mean? And then as you know, if you exercise more, that might affect your sleep.
Yeah.
So you might get better quality of sleep. And as soon as you get better quality sleep, you'll have more energy and you'll want to exercise more.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be more inclined to want to change your diet because you're doing all these other things. So then we start you on this other path where you're snowballing in the direction we want to go.
Yeah.
Does it work that way for spiritual health?
I would absolutely say
am I oversimplifying?
So. No, I think you're absolutely onto something, which is, we see it in the scriptures when, I guess, let me say it this way. If somebody wants to grow more spiritually healthy, we would naturally assume, okay, there's probably some practices or disciplines that you would naturally think of, right? If I want to know God more deeply, then I'm gonna read what He's said about Himself. So I jump into the Bible.
Okay.
Who is God? What does He say about Himself? What does He say about me? And what does He want from me? What does He expect from me? You know, all those kinds of questions are answered as you explore that. That's a discipline that makes sense. But then Jesus also encourages us to engage in other disciplines. And I'm like, what? Like on the surface, I'm like, what does that affect it? Fasting. If I want to be spiritually healthy, what does not having lunch have to do with anything? Right? That's a very physical activity. It brings physical nourishment for my physical body. On the surface, I might think, why in the world would that affect my spiritual health? And yet, like I found even very recently, being more committed to a regular fasting practice, I'm finding that the act of intentionally removing something that I know I need ultimately, I need nourishment. But if I, for a time, whether that's one meal or one day or a few days or whatever, I remove this thing that I both want and need. At some point that gets difficult, right? If I fast and skip breakfast, not so much. If I skip breakfast, lunch, dinner, coming into to one of those meals, I want food, and my body's crying out for food. But if I'm intentional about removing that and replacing it with something else, spending additional time in prayer or reading the scriptures, engaging in significant conversation with God, I'm doing a couple things. One, I'm creating a sense of value in my own mind and heart. Like these things are just as important as the others. But I'm also starting to develop some real self-discipline. When I want that thing, when I want lunch, and my stomach's rumbling and my body's telling me, hey, it's been 2 hours, it's time to eat again. And I say, no, I'm going to do this for a greater purpose. And I limit myself from it. I have found over the past couple months even, that showing discipline there on that little thing, resisting the urge for some food, my discipline, my self-discipline has grown by leaps and bounds in other places, so that the next time it's time for me to spend some time just engaged with the Lord in the quiet of the morning, but I'd rather sleep, I have more self-discipline. I've worked out those muscles. I've flexed those muscles. It's a lot easier for me to do the things I know I need to do that maybe in the moment I don't want to do, in other areas. So yeah, I think you're right. I think they do affect one another. And growing in maturity physically, health-wise, taking care of myself also has an effect on my perseverance and kind of the stick-to-itiveness, right? Like my intestinal fortitude in caring well for my soul as well.
So if someone wants to get stronger, get bigger muscles.
Yeah.
They have to sacrifice things. They have to sacrifice time. They have to sacrifice comfort because there's going to be a decent amount of discomfort. They usually have to change the different things. They have to change the way they eat. There are sacrifices that have to be made in order to achieve the desired result. And those sacrifices are uncomfortable. And with strength training, the more discomfort almost equals better gains in a way. Not always, but
sure.
But that's kind of like people who work harder and they've put more volume into it over a prolonged period of time, and they're able to withstand discomfort and then recover and then keep going.
Yeah.
They're the ones who typically outperform. So in that regard, if we looked at spiritual health, or at least the acquisition of spiritual health in that way, it would be looking for ways to intentionally invite struggle and discomfort so that the process of overcoming and dealing with that would ultimately yield a more spiritually healthy person who then, when is hit with other struggles, whether they're prepared or not, now has a foundation of dealing with struggle and can withstand and be more robust spiritually.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. James says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. And, if you stop there, you're like, joy? Like, I don't find most struggles joy-giving. But if you read the rest of it and you see, like, through that struggle, things like perseverance and discipline, those things are developed, then you are in fact laying that foundation as kind of a building block to add to kind of your spiritual repertoire of health, right?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I think in January of this year, I recorded a podcast like this with Aaron Peterson.
Yeah.
So from a Catholic deacon perspective, what are we talking about? Like, how do we approach this? And I don't know where this came from, if he had prepped this, but he said his definition of joy, or of spiritual health, is joy. If you want to boil it down to it. And it seems too simple, but I've thought of it so much since we've had that conversation. Because if you think about a Catholic saint, I can't imagine anyone wanting to be a Catholic saint, because those people go through, basically God just throws the worst life that you could imagine at these people, and they become saints because they just take it. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, I don't know, like Navy SEAL on steroids level of just pain management and like, I got this, and not that there's never doubt or anything like that, but these are people who are able to go through the most terrible things while still helping other people and not being resentful. You know what I mean?
Right.
Waking up and being like, the fact that I don't want this, but I'm able to handle it. There's this sense of joy. There has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know any saints, but I would imagine that like Mother Teresa was probably a joyful person, even though there was a lot of terrible things. Like she was inviting that, like she was looking to be in those environments, and that's what her calling was. So I feel like as someone who's not even remotely saintly, if I'm having a bad day, or I don't like something that's going on in my life, if I can have joy, that means I have gratitude. And that's where I find joy. So like, it's like, oh, this is just, all these things are going wrong. And it's like, well, what is there to be thankful for?
Yeah.
And you can come up with a long list. And when you start to think about all of those things, and then it's like, okay, these things that I don't like are going to go away, or they can't last forever. Even if they last my whole life, You know what I mean? Like if there is salvation at the end of it, what does it matter? You know what I mean? Who cares? And so then if you have gratitude, you can have joy. And if you're a joyful person, because you have that relationship with God, then would you not, like you could not be spiritually unhealthy.
Right.
Like it's almost like that pure expression of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought in a very simple terms, it's like, now not all joyful people are spiritually healthy. You know what I mean? Because you could find joy in a lot of twisted ways,
right.
You know what I mean? But I feel like, if you're trying to work on that relationship and it's something you're mindful of and you can find joy in the worst scenarios in your life, that means you have gratitude. And if you have gratitude, that means you're thinking about something greater than yourself. And so that definition of health, spiritual health, again, can't be measured.
Yeah.
But for me, it's been a way to put myself in check. You know what I mean? And then you can stop and reflect and be like, oh, I'm worshiping my problems right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I haven't thought about goodness in a while. I'm just thinking about,
right.
And then it's like, wow, stress, anxiety, these things
your attention gets drawn to these other things.
These are the false idols that I'm, you know what I mean, that I'm worshiping because it's all I think about.
Yeah.
And once you can step away from that and be like, oh, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to have gratitude. Your problems start to go away a little bit. You feel better. You have joy.
Yeah.
And then your day is better. But that's like the gift then that comes from that relationship.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think a big part of addressing this topic is more for well, I think it makes good podcast episodes, to be fair, but it is like a self-exploration. Like because when I was starting this company, I needed to figure out why, like what's the reason behind what I do. And I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. So I think I've read every book. And I took an online course by him. I've taken a couple online courses. And one book that I read, and I took the online course, was Start With Why. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, you gotta find your why.
Yeah.
And so he has a project in there that you can do. And you don't have to take the course. You can do the book or the course, but they come up the same, and it's a PDF. And so I was like, okay, I've gone through this material twice. I've got to do this project. And it is very uncomfortable. So you're not supposed to do it with your spouse, but I did it with my spouse anyway, because I couldn't find anyone else who was going to spend that kind of time. But essentially there's two packets. I go through a packet and I write down stories from my own life that deal with scenarios. And then my wife goes through a packet and she asks me questions and I have to tell her my stories. And then she answers questions that I don't see. I guess I could have looked.
Yeah.
So I don't get to define my why. So then she goes off for a long period of time and does her workbook and then comes back and says, based on this is the reason why you do what you do.
She interprets what you've said. Yeah.
So the idea from Simon was that you can't choose your own why because it's inherently biased and selfish, and someone has to, and that's why I don't think he wanted a spouse to do it, because there's a lot of bias there as well. But it had to be someone who knows you. So anyway, it was a good project. It took a whole afternoon to do, so we had to get a babysitter. But the why is really the build beyond why, because I'm the only person in this company. And I imagine that at some point, the company's reason for existing will shift beyond my reason. But my why is to challenge and guide people so that they can reach their full potential.
Yeah.
So if I'm now, that guides everything that I do.
Sure.
So that is the reason why I practice the way that I do, that I put emphasis on physical fitness and nutrition and sleep, because people need to be challenged. And then they need the guidance. If they ultimately want to reach their full potential, there has to be some agency on, like, they have to be able to take the steps on. I can walk with you, but I can't walk for you.
Yeah.
And I can't do things for you.
Right.
maybe a little bit here and there, you trip, I can pick you up, but that's about it. I got to step back and you've got to go yourself. The success has to be yours to be sustainable. But then at some point I've got to stop and ask myself, well, if my goal, my purpose is to challenge and guide people so that they can reach their full potential, what does full potential mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what is my full potential? You might think, well, like how high can your vertical be, or how fast can you run a 40? You know what I mean? Like my mind will go there, but it's like, well, is my full potential somehow tied to my relationship to God?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, that's something that I don't talk to patients about because I'm not qualified to do that. And it's not something that I really have historically taken seriously, even though I grew up in the church. But now with kids, it's like, okay, well, am I setting them up to reach, am I challenging and guiding them so that they have a foundation to reach their full potential?
Sure.
Probably not from a spiritual perspective. So how do I, and I don't know the answer to this question, but how do I, with my company, with podcast and seeing patients and helping people with pain and physical health, how do I help them reach their full potential? Because their full potential, if all of their numbers are great,
yeah,
and then ultimately they're not saved,
right,
and they put their trust and faith in me, and I never brought it up, did I not? And it's not something that's like going to be on my intake forms anytime soon. And I think just having these discussions as for resources for people, because I know a lot of people who are physically very healthy, but don't have a relationship with God. On the flip side, I know a lot of people who put a lot of time into their relationship with God, and they are just destroying their bodies.
Absolutely.
And that is another, I think, a paradox for me. And it dawned on me one time when I was having a conversation with someone about yoga. Now, depending on who you talk to, and I don't know how it is outside of Catholicism, but there are a lot of Catholics who are very skeptical about yoga.
Sure.
And having gone to a lot of yoga classes, I don't get it. It's not like, I understand their argument, and I would never try and convince someone to go do something that makes them feel uncomfortable. But I have never had a conversation with someone, a Catholic, who doesn't want to do yoga, who I would consider to be physically healthy. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So these are people who are, they're generally, I'm thinking of some specific people. So this isn't going to be 100% of the time, but for my own experience, overweight, inactive, poor diet. So I love the quote from The Usual Suspects. You remember when Kevin Spacey reveals himself as Kaiser Sose, and they're like, the greatest trick the devil pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. You know, and it's like, could you be influenced in a negative way in a yoga studio? Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
You could be influenced a negative way in the Catholic Church. You know what I mean? Like, even if you're ordained, it obviously happens. So you're not safe anywhere. So you've got people who are like, I'm not going to do that because of my spiritual beliefs. Great. And then they go to the grocery store
and load up.
And they load up with stuff that is just annihilating. So then they're disrespecting the giver by disrespecting the gift.
The body that he's given us. Yeah.
And so then I run through the question of like, can someone actually be spiritually healthy if they don't care about their physical body?
Yeah.
And I don't know if the stats of like, has there ever been a morbidly obese saint? Probably not, because if they had extra food, I'm assuming they would have given it away, or like they, you know what I mean? Like there's, so that I don't know that like Mother Teresa was bench pressing regularly, but I'm assuming she took a ton of steps. You know what I mean? And that she wasn't overeating. And that she was conscious of drinking water and things like that.
Her spiritual health had an effect on her physical health as well.
Yeah. So, but those are outliers. So like, if you think you're going to live a life and maybe be canonized as a saint someday, maybe don't listen to anything that I'm saying. But for those of us who are not in that conversation, and it's uncomfortable to talk about. And it's hard for me to talk about because I don't want people to be feel like I'm judging them.
Sure.
But if my job is my purpose is to challenge you, I have to challenge people who say that they have a good relationship with God, but they treat their bodies poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean we have to be Olympic athletes or have six packs.
Right.
But people who are like carrying too much body weight and they've got, effects of a lifestyle where they're disrespecting the gift.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound harsh to say, but I can't see it in anything other than disrespect.
Yeah.
So you obviously care about your physical body. You work out, you're working on so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Has that always been a thought? Like you realized early on you wanted this profession.
Yeah.
When did physical health has the dedication to physical health and its connection to spiritual health always been there, or is that something? If it hasn't been, what was the epiphany, or was there an epiphany that you were like, "Ooh, I got to take this more seriously"?
I've always been active. I played sports growing up, so physical health has always been important to me. Obviously, there are seasons in my life where I've been a lot more faithful to that and that pursuit than others. I think for me, it goes back to that kind of mind, body, and soul. And there are times where I've probably been in college. I was very physically fit. Spiritually, if I look back and I'm really honest with myself, I mean, I went to a Christian college. I was studying ministry, like I spent plenty of time studying the Bible and writing papers and, all those kinds of things, going to chapel, all that stuff. But those were boxes that I had checked, but I wasn't like spiritually healthy, like deeply spiritually healthy at that time. So I had the appearance of it. And if I want to play the comparative game, I was probably healthier spiritually than like I could find 2 or 3 people that are less healthy and a bunch that were more, know. And I think it was probably a few years ago, Sarah, my wife, and I, when it came to our physical health, both of us had always been active. We were in our mid 40s. We're like, wow, we don't perform like we did when we were 20 or 30. My kids are in high school and I would love to go out and play soccer with my daughter and her friends. Can I get on the field? Sure. Did I perform at the level that I used to? Not at all. And so as we started to just kind of look holistically, mind, body, and soul, I was in a pretty good place spiritually then. Physically, I just wasn't satisfied with it. So was it a deep epiphany where the Lord kind of opened the skies and said, Josh, you're disrespecting the gift that I've given you? No. Should I have come to that awareness at that point? Yeah, I probably should have been aware of that. I just wasn't. For me, I just realized, man, I'm getting older, and the natural progression as you approach, I was approaching 50, as I'm headed toward 50, the natural progression isn't to become healthier.
Yeah.
In most people. If I want to be healthier than I am now, I'm going to have to inject some energy in the system because the momentum is headed the wrong direction. And so Sarah and I started on kind of the journey physically, or got back on the journey, probably is a better way to say it. 4 years ago or whatever it was. It was when we jumped in with you.
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah. And over the last 4 years, we've started to see that overall holistic benefit, mind, body, and soul, just being a lot more stable, a lot more consistent in who we are in those areas.
So your spiritual health improved with your physical health in that context.
Sure, it has.
So for people who are working on that relationship with God, and they're looking for ways to grow.
Yeah.
That's potentially a low-hanging fruit. It's a good analogy. It's like, well, if you're not doing it,
You always say, do something.
Yeah.
Right. When you were telling me do something, either on emails or, the Monday motivations or in the gym, when you had given us a workout, and for whatever reason, I was kind of like not giving it 100% effort. Maybe I was giving it 80% effort. If you noticed it, you'd say, you'd push that little bit. But even at the beginning, you just say, do something. Get up and do 5 push-ups if that's all you can do. Do a couple toe touches. Do 5 air squats if that's all. Do something. And I would say, same thing spiritually. If you've never really addressed that area of your life, or if you have and have walked away from it and kind of gotten lazy, you've been sitting on the spiritual couch for the last decade, I would encourage you the same way. Do something. You don't have to be Mother Teresa with this incredible passion for the Lord and his work. You don't have to sell everything and move to Calcutta tomorrow, but you can do something to start the journey and to take a few steps. What about Bob, right? The theologian, take baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to Brock. I think I told you guys about this. He was reading a book, and it's hard when you haven't read a book to talk about the book, but I think the Mother Teresa analogy came up, and it was like, okay, so if you want to do something and be like somebody, you kind of look at that end product, and you're like, oh, I'd have to move to Calcutta and I have to do all this stuff. And it's like, no, not necessarily. I mean, you might end up there, but you would more want to look at like, what are the habits? What are the things that person, what were the glass balls that person would never have dropped?
Right.
So, maybe someone like Mother Teresa is going to wake up and pray every morning, and fast and pray. And maybe that's something you're like, I could do that. I'll latch onto that. Or maybe it's walking through and finding gratitude regardless of the scenario.
Yeah.
I don't know. You would look at that person and you would look at the little things, if you're trying to be like Michael Jordan, then it's like, okay, well, what were his non-negotiables?
Yeah.
Did he go to bed at a certain time? Did he get up at a certain time? Was there a certain number of shots each week that he would take from the free throw line, regardless of whether he was sick or he didn't want to do it? That was just, so you would look at those non-negotiables, the little things, and you would just replicate those, and then you would stack those, rather than looking at the whole person and being like, oh, I could never amount to that.
Sure.
Because your ceiling, your full potential might actually be greater than that person.
Yep.
You just haven't taken the steps to get there.
I read a book years ago. The author, I think it was Kevin Harney, wrote a book called Seismic Shifts. And the premise of his book is, a massive earthquake, like a strong, 7.6 earthquake happens when 2 tectonic plates slip, maybe a foot. There's not a lot of movement at the plate level, but the ramifications on the surface are massive, right? And I think, what you're talking about is those seismic shifts. Like in your life, just make a minor adjustment and let it play out over time. And I think in our, the group that I'm meeting with you every Thursday, we're seeing some of that even after 8, 9, 10 weeks, where there are folks in that group that at the beginning, their big goals, I'm going to do this, I'm going to hammer it out, seem like such a little thing, right? I'm going to do 5 push-ups every day or 10 push-ups every day. It doesn't seem like it would make a massive change, but then fast forward 10 weeks, and today you've got people that are like, yeah, this week I didn't meet all my goals. And this is somebody who's now stacked 5, 6, 7, 8 daily goals on top of each other and is doing air squats and jump squats and eating better and logging their meals. And they're doing all these things 10 weeks ago. Never would have had an inclination to do all that stuff. It's so cool to see people make seismic shifts where they just make a minor adjustment that over time stack on top of each other, and they benefit them spiritually and physically and emotionally.
So then I think if I'm going to attempt to summarize what you've talked about for spiritual health, it would be a person's ability, since there's a wide spectrum of things that we can't really measure, but we know will come together to produce spiritual health.
Yeah.
So someone's spiritual health, although immeasurable, is their ability to find some type of balance and cohesion with everything while recognizing that allowing any one of these balls to drop is inevitably going to have a ripple effect. But at the same time, if you do drop a ball, picking it back up also has a ripple effect on everything else. So your spiritual health would be your ability to keep those balls from dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do drop, just pick them back up and then keep going. And if you can do that, and you're conscious of how everything affects everything else, even if it's physical health, it's one of the balls in there. And even if nothing's perfect, if you're constantly like keeping those balls off the ground, and you're never letting them just roll away, you're probably at least on the right path.
Yep. And I would say yes to all of that. And I would only add to it, spiritual health has to be tied to God's ultimate purposes and desires for who you are and what you're becoming, right? And so as a Christian, the Bible tells me this is what spiritual health looks like, and that's the reproduction of who God is in his creation. So I tend to go back to the fruit of the Spirit. Do I exhibit those qualities? God is love. He gives joy, peace, patience, kindness. He is good. All of those things. Control also listed in there. If I see those things in increasing measure, maybe I'm not at the level of Mother Teresa, but if over time those qualities are growing in my life, if they're coming to maturity, if the apple's getting bigger, even though it's not quite seasoned yet, we know something good's happening. And I would say in my own life, spiritual health can be assessed by the presence or the growth of fruit in my life that is beneficial to reproduce who God is. Which, incidentally, on this kind of a side thought, is fruit does very little, if anything, for the plant itself. It's purely for the benefit of reproducing that plant later and offering nourishment to the birds or the animals or the people that come by it, right? An apple does nothing for the apple tree. It only takes energy out of the system. But it will reproduce that apple tree and probably feed some little critter along the way. So the benefits external, away from. So I think in my own life, spiritual health looks like the production of fruit, nourishment of those around me, and the reproduction of who God is and what he desires in his creation to be played out and advanced in my life.
Can we have spiritual health without Jesus?
As a Christian, I would say no. I believe that Jesus is God, that he is the Son of God, and that he's come to redeem and transform me to what God originally intended for humanity. And I don't think that happens as I've explored other faiths. I don't think that happens in any other religious system or structure. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so I would say no. Can you be a good person through another religious system? Absolutely. I know some really amazing people that are not Christian, but I don't think they would be fully healthy or alive in the way they were meant to be without Christ in their lives.
That is going to make people uncomfortable, but that is the challenging. I would imagine that a large part of what you do is challenging people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because you can't just be sitting on the fence, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to a certain extent. you have to hold a line,
mm-hmm.
And I think that's, as I get older, the bigger questions, you know what I mean? Like, what do I actually believe? How important is this to me? If it is important, should I go all in? Am I just doing lip service? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I wonder how many people, are also going through this, whether it's struggling with physical health or spiritual health, and not knowing how to define it and not knowing what that actually means, and all these confusing questions. And then if someone says something and it challenges how they see themselves or how they were raised or how they're raising their kids.
Sure.
And it's like, well, that's, automatically going to trigger people and make them upset.
Yeah.
But in a similar way, if I hired a Sherpa to help me get to the top of Everest, and that Sherpa legitimately thought I didn't have a shot, like I was going the wrong way or I was going to die or I wasn't prepared, I'm kind of paying you to tell me that. Like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, if you show up to base camp and you don't have the physical ability to get there, you would hope he'd say, you're not coming tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't have the right gear. It's like, look, you're not prepared. So you would want to hear that.
Sure.
And I think those are some of the harder conversations to have, where I would imagine for you counseling people, maybe like, especially like in a family situation.
Yeah.
Spiritual health is going to be potentially not at the same level, and some people maybe make decisions based off of a really good spiritual health, and other people are making decisions that are not in line with that. But
sure,
two people are married, or they're brother and sister, or they're whatever.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those conflicts? Is that
I would guess it's probably similar to the way you handle those things, those conversations, whether it's in the gym. You've asked me to do some things in the gym I just didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And you've made me very uncomfortable, physically, right? Mm-hmm. There are times at the end of a workout, I just laid on the ground and I'm like, I can't even drag myself to my car right now. And there were times where I thought, man, I don't know that I really want to go see Chris today.
Yeah.
Cause he's going to hurt me. And there were times where I was kind of mailing it in and you called me out on it. Did I enjoy hearing that? No, but overall I knew it was coming from a place where you had best intentions and interests in my physical health. And so I would say spiritually, it's the same thing. So, if you ask a question, can somebody be spiritually healthy without a relationship with specifically Jesus? And I say, no, I really don't think so. Understand it comes from a similar heart that I have found Christ to be truly transformative at a soul level. And I would hope that everyone would find that and see what that does for you.
Yeah.
And so I say it with deep interest in and concern for, compassion for, love for individuals. That in my experience and belief, I think this is the way to spiritual fulfillment and health, is through Christ. And so I would encourage everybody to earnestly ask some of those big spiritual questions, to look for those answers in earnest, for their benefit, eternally, their spiritual benefit.
Well, I think that's a good spot to end it.
Yeah, this has been fun. I've enjoyed these topics. I think, you kind of indicated, like, it's a bit of a Pandora's box. We could talk about this for months on end as you explore and learn and grow. It's cool. It's a great topic.
And I think the interesting thing, one of the interesting things, is that no one has an answer, though. It's always that's the mystery. That's like the concept of it's faith. It's not knowing. Like, if we knew, around the time when I had this initial podcast in January, I did start a daily practice of reading the Bible, which I've never really done before. I want to say, like, in Catholic school when I was a kid, we had religion class every day.
Sure.
So to a certain extent we did, but that was like as a child, so I didn't have like the same understanding, nor did I really appreciate it because it was just something that we did every day. But something there as an adult reading the Bible every day, and I only stick to the New Testament. I do Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah. So I've read a lot of the things at the same time. I just open it up and I read whatever pops out. So I have no structure. There are some common themes. One, I didn't realize how many people were possessed. So
right. Yeah.
And it was like basically like every other day, someone's pulling a demon out of somebody. And even when Jesus was giving his initial instructions to the people following him, that was like one of the things. And you will do.
He specifically mentioned,
and you're gonna exorcise demons out of people. So that has nothing to do with this podcast. But I was just like, that was a funny thing. But another thing is like Jesus, and I don't know his tone of voice, obviously, but as I'm reading this more, it's almost like, okay, so he doesn't sin, but almost like I just picture him like,
of course,
like you've watched me do miracles, and he kind of, I forget, there's a couple times when he's like, I think one time they asked him about a parable or something, and he was like, because the vast majority of people will never know me, and I can't, like, they're not, so I have to tell stories. Like, this is how I get the message across. But you've seen me, and he kind of scolds them a couple times. Like, you've actually seen this. So I have almost like there's more patience for like us because we're thousands of years later. But it was like, you watched me bring someone back from the dead. You watched me do this. You drank the wine that I just created out of nothing. Like, and you're still questioning me. What is going on with that? And so, but I think, like, and I had this discussion with my wife the other day. I was like, if you read enough about like Jesus's portrayal, that story, it's very easy to get frustrated with the people around him.
Sure.
Like he told you what was going to happen. You knew,
right?
It's not like just one day, like, oh, I'm getting crucified. Like, it's
None
not like
this is a surprise.
Yeah, he basically he set you up for this. So, in this time, you can take a bunch of people and you can put them in the military and you can prepare them to go endure horrific things.
Yeah.
And be systematic and detach emotion. You can look at like any branch, but I mean, like, most people are going to envision like Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Terrible things are going to happen. We are not going to overreact. We're going to stick to the plan. We've been trained. We expect it. I have to imagine that people with that mentality existed 2,000 years ago. Yeah. And Jesus specifically did not pick those people to follow him. Because if he had 12 Navy SEAL mentality people, when they were dragging him away and putting the cross on him and the crown of thorns, they would have just been like, part of the plan. Stick to the plan. And then people would have been like, aren't you the guy who hangs out with Jesus? They're like, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm not going to deny him. And it's like,
yeah, you get someone's like, cross, I'll climb up on it.
Yeah, here's $20. Can you give up Jesus? Like, nah. I don't, no, not going to happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so that mentality of that exists today, those types of people clearly existed back then.
Yeah.
He picked people who were definitely going to mess it up.
Yeah.
But that was kind of part of the plan.
Yeah.
That people were going to make mistakes, because how else could you learn? So I just think that that's a funny theme when I go through, and for me, it's helpful because it's like, obviously I make those mistakes as well. And so it's like, okay, if these guys who were watching were denying him and like making mistakes and having anxiety about storms and things like that. And it's like, okay, so I'm not like, I'm pretty normal here.
Yeah.
And if they can be redeemed, and I don't know, I just feel like if I'm searching for spiritual health, that practice of reading the Bible and reading the stories, even though a lot of them are hard to understand, you do, if you do it enough, start to pick up on themes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, oh, okay, I'm starting to see what this person was like. You know what I mean? And what these people around him were like.
Yeah. And
then I heard it on a podcast. I think I saw it on Instagram as a clip, but it was a guy who was talking about, is like, if I, if my dad died and he left me a bunch of like journals that he had written, he's like, I would read them regularly.
Yeah.
Especially if I had never met him, if he died before I was born. So he's like, we have this book. Why would we not be reading it regularly to know?
Yeah.
Or to
become more familiar with.
Yeah. To understand the thought process, even if you could call it a thought process, because it's obviously, we believe it's beyond thought, but that's the only way my mind can conceptualize it. But I think that this journey for spiritual health, how could we know? You know what I mean? Like, any definition we're going to come up with is probably not
it's going to come short somewhere.
Yeah. But asking these questions, I don't know. Again, maybe it's just selfish on my part because I'm just trying to figure it out. So it's like, gives me an opportunity to sit down for an hour or two every once in a while with somebody and try and work through it to a certain extent.
It's such a great practice, a beneficial practice to do so, just to hash out ideas and sort out like the stuff that you believe that maybe that's not quite right. I need to keep exploring that.
Yeah.
Other things that maybe somebody else has discovered and kind of started to figure out that you're like, oh, there it is. It's so good.
Well, since you do this for a living, if people are listening to this podcast, because it's a cool thing about podcasts, I've been impacted by podcasts that are like, the episode was like 10 years ago. Wasn't even listening to, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then so there's a possibility that someone's going to listen to this in the future, and they're going to be like, I need help with that. And like, let's say you're still doing what you do,
Yeah.
I imagine that anyone can reach out and get you on the phone at some point.
Yeah.
And have that conversation. Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm volunteering you right now, but is that
email's a great way to do that.
Okay.
Josh at Hillsdale UB.
Okay. I'll put it in the description.
Sure.
So if you're listening to this, go to the description. That email is there.
HillsdaleUB.org.
Okay.
Yeah. Or reach out to a pastor in your area. Find a church.
Yeah.
I mean, you're Catholic. I'm Protestant. And we can sit down and talk through those things. And I would just encourage people to really explore mind, body, and soul.
I just have sympathy for you guys because at some point I know you'll migrate back to the church.
Yeah.
The Catholic Protestant, like growing up, my only knowledge of that rift, I like think of like the IRA in Ireland. You know what I mean? Like bombing. I'm like, it seems crazy that they hate each other that much.
It often feels like siblings that are like pounding on each other in the back seat of the car.
I just remember being a kid and being like, I know a lot of Protestants, and I never wanted to like. We kind of just think about it's all the same for the most part. Like there's the differences are so subtle.
Yeah.
That I don't. It was always just funny to me. But then when we moved to Hillsdale, here on campus, the Catholics and the Protestants don't fight, but they definitely debate each other, and we
bicker.
They even have a soccer game every year where they play each other. And so it was the first time coming here that I've actually experienced a rivalry in that way, where I think it's kind of funny. And then obviously being Catholic, I tend to hang out. Well, I don't hang out more with Catholics, but I see that side of it a little bit more, and it's like, and then I find myself like, yeah, like, wait, what? I'm not picking the side here. It's just it's a funny thing.
On the road trip of life, if Jesus is driving, Catholics and Protestants are the siblings in the back seat.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while, there's like, stop touching me. Or we go at it a little bit and argue about this, that, or the other thing. And that's all. We're all headed in the car in the right direction if we're following him.
Yeah. Although there are a lot of people who don't think that too.
I know.
And when you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, wow, that is a strong opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I don't know. So it's
something to fight about on another podcast.
Well, I think for people listening, they might be hesitant. So it's like, if they're like, why Catholicism is too judgmental, which is like not necessarily incorrect. But it comes from I think it comes from at least a desire to be honest and loving. So last time I went to confession, I got that kind of like holy slap in the face where it was like, the priest was definitely not pulling any punches, but it's kind of what I went for.
Sure.
Where he was like, he wasn't trying to make me feel good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He wasn't being mean, but it was like just very blunt.
Yeah.
So some people might be like, well, I wouldn't want to go talk to a Catholic priest or a deacon because I'm going to get that kind of. So I think a lot of people, maybe going to talk to a Protestant would be more like an easier step into it. But someone might see it from a different perspective where they're like, no, I think I would want that more. So I think if there are non-religious people out there who want to have answers to things, I think the important things are probably going to be the same. You know what I mean? Like you're going to get subtle differences.
Yep.
But like the foundational principles, which I think is kind of funny because like from a Protestant perspective, which I had never realized, there's a lot of Protestants who are like, can Catholics go to heaven? And it's like, are they really Christian? And it's like, wait, what? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but the fact that people even question that, and then on the Catholic side, there's that same thing. It's like, well, what about this? And what about this?
Sure.
Which again, like you said, as a topic for another podcast, probably that I shouldn't host, but I think those things are interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of answers are in there. You know what I mean? Just in the discussion. And no one has to be right. So I don't know, because I've listened to different opinions where I'm like, I definitely don't agree with it, but it's challenging me to ask, why don't I agree with it?
Yeah. To think critically through it.
If someone was like, do you not like that? And I go, yeah. And then they say, why? It's like asking someone, okay, so you don't like this politician. Why? List me what policies specifically do you not like? What didn't you like about the way they handled a certain situation? How did they vote on this? Same thing if you like someone, like name 10 things that they have done that you like.
You're all about.
And a lot of times there is nothing. Like there's no critical thought. It's just for whatever reason you made a decision. And then from a religious standpoint or a spiritual health standpoint, sometimes we just have beliefs, but and their beliefs aren't necessarily wrong or right. It's just like we've never really critically thought.
You've never really assessed them.
Yeah, as an adult, it's like, why do I hold this belief?
Yeah.
And sometimes going through that actually strengthens that belief because you're like, oh, now I can articulate why I believe that. And other times it helps you realize, oh, this might not be.
Yeah, to refine it.
Yeah, this might not be. I might not be on the wrong path, but I'm not. Maybe I haven't hit the nail on the head in the way that I thought that I did. So you have almost this false sense of security with where you are, which again, I think is another trap that people can fall into. It's the same way in health where people are like, I'm pretty healthy. And it's like, define it. Like
I'm healthier than I was 6 months ago.
Yeah. It's like, so okay, maybe not.
Probably not.
All right. That's a good spot to end it for real this time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Josh.